involved over the last several days this weekend to do the very best to provide safety and security for the town of Ocean City. With that, I also want to acknowledge and my thanks to all law enforcement that assisted us, the Maryland State Police, our own Sheriff's Department, and many other law enforcement agencies that assisted us, supported us to the very end. We were in this together. At times it was very, very difficult, very taxing, and very trying. But at the end, we prevailed, and the amount of safety and security of the town by our efforts, our abilities, never completely wavered. So I just wanted to say that we will continue to serve and protect this community. We will never back down. We will never stand back. We will always be there, regardless of the situation, regardless of what we face. And we can't do this alone. And like I started off by saying, we have the true support of our community, and we will do everything for them.
Thank you. Christine would certainly be happy to open up to any questions. I'm sure that there's a number of questions for either the chief or myself.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor. If you have a question at this time, you may raise your hand or submit it through the question box. The first question we have is from Josh Kim with Ocean City Today. His question is, so with all of the arrests made, vehicles towed, and fines issued, does OCPD believe that this past weekend was a success and that this has discouraged pop-up rally participants from returning to the resort?
I would say that success may not be the appropriate word. I would say that the measures that we introduced through legislation, exhibition driving, and heightened fines, and the ability to tow vehicles that were deemed unsafe, those measures assisted us greatly. It all comes down to the fact that we had literally tens of thousands and the hundreds of thousands of people here this weekend. It could have rivaled 4th of July weekend. So with that number of people and the measures we were able to introduce gave us an ability to maintain control virtually throughout the 4 to 5 days of this event. So in that regard, we saw a degree of success.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to that too. I think that we sent a clear message. I think that all our planning that we put in place was enacted. I think it was a clear message. It was a message that we are going to enforce the law here in Ocean City. And I think, again, thanks to law enforcement, that did take place. I think it will discourage some from returning. And really our goal was to discourage those that didn't come here for the right reasons not to return. We've also heard from some of those that are involved in what they would really like to see be a car show. Then they've reached out to us. They have concerns about the activities and some of the things that they saw take place that far exceeded anything that had any relevance to a car show whatsoever. So we hope to continue those conversations. But I think it was a success in the fact that we made a statement, we had a plan in place, we enacted that plan successfully, and I think in that regard, it was successful as far as enforcement is concerned.
Our next question is from Steve Green. As the city warned ahead of time, there were major traffic changes made. Could you walk us through the rationale behind closing southbound Coastal Highway at the Route 90 bridge Friday night and then downtown area Saturday night?
So each of those measures, obviously, going back to my previous remarks, in terms of volume, the large volume of motorists, just people in town, and the activities that were taking place, we needed to, in an effort to control certain areas of the town, Midtown, and even specific to the lower part of town, we needed to exhaust some of the volume of traffic that was in town. We, to a degree, were successful in doing that, in moving traffic, diverting it out of downtown, gave us the ability to add more law enforcement down into those areas, and as a further layer of protection and security and mitigating those issues that we were experiencing downtown with motorists on the roadway, as well as the sheer tens of thousands of visitors that were off the roadway, but bystanders watching the activity that took place on Coastal Highway and adjoining streets, Baltimore and St. Louis Avenue. So it gave us an ability of further control. Also, as on Saturday evening, as we were experiencing an uptick in the sheer volume of calls for service and activities that we were attempting to address, and the sheer number of arrests that were taking place, we made the decision to prevent traffic from 62nd Street to further travel south. That gave us the ability to otherwise gain control. So we moved traffic and prevented traffic from traveling southbound from 90. We channeled that traffic northbound. I know that caused congestion, but it also gave us ability to further control our environment. And I know that it was a disruption. It caused a delay in motorists for people from where they needed to go and travel. Well, we advised that this would be one of the measures we would introduce as needed. So on behalf of the department, we realized that this caused a degree of possibly consternation with our visitors and our residents, but it was necessary for us to maintain security and control of Midtown and downtown.
Yeah, so I'd like to add to that is the fact that we anticipated that these measures would take place, and we needed the community to be informed of that. We sent out a notice, a postcard actually to all property owners in the town of Ocean City, letting them know that there would be traffic pattern changes, and some of these things may occur during the height of traffic situations. We've been talking about that for the last couple of weeks, both the chief and I doing PSAs, letting the general public know that this could occur, and really letting everybody know that this could occur, even those that might be part of the pop-up rally, so that they would be aware and maybe encourage them not to put us in a situation where those types of measures have to take place. They did take place, they did work, they accomplished what the chief set out to do, and I think it's just another one of those things we're going to continue to do when necessary, when it becomes essential that happens.
Okay, I'm going to unmute Colin Campbell to go ahead and ask his question. Colin, you're unmuted. Okay, we'll move on to somebody else. Kylie Panetta, I will go ahead and unmute you to go ahead and ask your question. Kylie? I think, Kylie, you're currently self-muted as well. All right, we'll go ahead and move on. Matt Prensky, we'll go ahead and unmute you. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Perfect. So, Chief, I wanted to ask you about Saturday night's activities from 5th Street to 30th Street from Baltimore and Philadelphia. Can you describe what officers were facing with the crowds, how long it took to get control of the area, and really the second wave of officers that came into Ocean City? What did that look like? How many came in, and where did they come from?
So going into Saturday, we had a degree of control, high visibility, and really the focal point of operation in terms of deployment and tactics were really centralized from 33rd Street down to the very lowest part of Ocean City. And back to specific on Baltimore Avenue, we had a number of officers deployed and a number of tactics that we had put in play. So there was, although it was, very busy for us in terms of the number of people, and obviously going back to my previous remarks in terms of traffic, we made the decision about 5 o'clock to divert traffic out of that downtown area along Baltimore Avenue for the purposes of really reestablishing that strategy, that deployment down there in an effort to further gain control and allow us just buying time as we were moving forward. Previous events and intel have, we've realized that going into Saturday evening would be even cause additional challenges for us. So back to removing that traffic element to a high degree, we were basically able to establish control down on Baltimore Avenue. At one point, we had to let the traffic re-enter into Ocean City. And for us, we continued on as best to our ability to mitigate all the issues, all the calls for service, all of the roadway violations, all of the disorderly piecing and disorder types of activities that were taking place. We were citing as many as violations as possible, as well as making as many arrests as possible to maintain a degree of control. At one point, we made the decision based on the situation we found ourselves in that more law enforcement were needed. We made a call out to available law enforcement personnel on the Eastern Shore. So we had several hundred law enforcement officers already involved with the operation, and that additional call for personnel added an additional layer to that, where we had upwards of several hundred law enforcement officers giving us a helping hand. Through it all, like I said, very difficult, very taxing, but we did our very best to maintain a degree of control, especially in the downtown area. And what you have to also remember, although that is the priority in the sense of geography, we were still dealing with activity occurring midtown and even at the higher end, the higher end of Ocean City from 120th Street above. So suffice it to say, it was multi-dynamic, but once again, with strategy and deployment, we felt that we were doing everything we could to provide the level of security that was needed.
And Matt, if I can add to that is, part of the plan was to have backup and to have those officers available if in fact the need did arise. And just to take that extra layer of precaution, those calls were made. And I think it was being proactive on the part of Chief Buzzuro and everybody up at the EOC, just to make sure that all bases were covered and we didn't leave anything for chance. And that's exactly what happened, and it worked exactly as it was supposed to.
And if I could also follow up, I think it's important in the bigger picture for everyone to understand this really isn't a crime-fueled event. There was virtually no crime in the traditional sense that took place in Ocean City, criminal activity. There were very minimal amounts of destruction of property. There was assaultive behavior, but even that, with tens of thousands of people, that behavior wasn't in any high number. So I just want to stress that. So some of those factors were relatively non-existent. It was the disorderly peace and good order that we were trying to maintain and throughout, maintain ability to accomplish that throughout everything that we were doing. So like I said, as far as seriousness of crime and crime activity was virtually non-existent throughout the whole entire weekend.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Mike Bradley. Mike, go ahead, you're unmuted.
All right, thanks. Good afternoon, guys, Mayor and Chief. Two-part question. I know from the outside looking in, it may have been tough to tell, but Chief, were things incrementally slightly better, worse, or the same as last year? And then also, Mr. Mayor, there was a rumor the governor was at the EOC on Saturday night, but whether he was or not, has he reached out to you over the last 24 hours and committed to any more resources for next year?
You were first.
You want to look at the governor?
As a matter of fact, no, the governor was not in the EOC. We're in contact with the governor's office, and he did assign Pete Landon, who's the Secretary of Homeland Security, to be his liaison with our efforts here. I have already had communication with Pete since the weekend, and we'll continue those conversations. They were committed to whatever resources we needed, and they followed through with that. We have a great working relationship with the state. We will do a debriefing with them, and we will continue to keep them as a valued partner.
Mike, good afternoon. What I'd like to also say, from the start of the special event zone on Tuesday all the way through just ending yesterday, or actually this morning, we had a high degree of control Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, even into Friday. We had some high points in terms of becoming very challenging throughout in the Friday evening. Through our efforts, we were able to mitigate through, and going into Saturday, we felt pretty comfortable, even though it was extremely challenging and very busy going into actually Saturday evening until we had our flashpoint, a carryover, if you will, a spillover, which caused the additional call for law enforcement. So if you look at the totality of the special event zone, we had a high degree of control throughout. And back to your question, using the special event zone and the ability to provide us those additional measures for control worked. I can say subjectively, but really on behalf of, and this is the sentiment of all officers, from what we've seen in years past, the roadway violations were curtailed greatly. We didn't see, and I'm talking about throughout now, the 5 days, we had our moments, but throughout there was a sense of deflation on top of roadway violations, and the number and the manner in which we had traditionally seen them had to a high degree curtailed. We were making arrests for those egregious violations, for exhibition driving, and that was making a difference. I think for the most part, throughout, motorists did the appropriate thing. We're still dealing with, we take out tens of thousands, we're still dealing with a small number of those that are committing these violations. So back to it, the measures that, the abilities that we were given this year truly gave us a helping hand. And without them, I think we definitely would be in a worse situation now. Towing those vehicles to the degree that we were able to, and also that coordination and cooperation with the tow companies helped us considerably as well.
Colin Campbell with the Baltimore Sun. I will go ahead and unmute you now to ask your question.
Hi there. Just wanted to see, you sort of started by saying how much of an issue you had to keep maintaining control. And then you kind of turned around and said that actually it wasn't a crime-fueled event and that there was very minimal amounts of destruction of property and other issues. So I guess just, considering the concerns of optics and having these videos coming out and what they look like for Ocean City, being a tourist destination, what do you think that the takeaway is of how this all went this weekend?
Well, the takeaway for us is it's very unfortunate. Like I said, from a crime perspective and a law enforcement perspective, when you think about crime and issues and violence, like I said, that was virtually non-existent in the traditional sense. So there needs to be an understanding. I'm not saying that what we faced wasn't at times dire, especially in terms of our own safety. I mean, look, we were having bottles and bricks thrown at us. We were being assaulted. Our vehicles, there was damage to our vehicles. But in the totality, in the last 5 or 6 days, if you look at the tens of thousands of people that were here in town, from that perspective, it could have been a lot worse. So I'm not, downplaying the fact is that our safety was put in jeopardy, especially on Saturday night. So look, we can't walk away from this. We have to look at next year and look at the operation in terms of how we strategize and partner with law enforcement and our community, with the degree of looking at how can we make our community ways to make it more safe and to find ways to control this moving forward. That's the best we can do.
Yeah, Colin, to answer your question about the tourism part of this, this is an unsanctioned pop-up event. It's a social media generated event. This isn't something that's approved or supported by the town of Ocean City. If it didn't take place, that certainly would be fine with us at this point because of the actions that we anticipated and we saw this weekend. We did our very best to make sure that other potential visitors were aware of what we might expect this weekend. We even went as far as to say that if you're looking to enjoy that quiet, fall weekend in Ocean City, please come and do that, but probably this weekend wouldn't have been the best weekend to do that. And that's unfortunate because that's not what Ocean City is all about. And this event isn't what Ocean City is all about. And that's the message we're trying to clearly send to those that were here. And I hope they got the message. I hope they heard it. I hope their parents are listening. I mean, if you saw the actions of these young adults here in town, I don't really think it's something you'd be proud of or you'd want to see in your community. And we saw this spill over throughout the state. I've seen videos of some of the activity that took place on the Bay Bridge and in other locations as well. As a state, this just isn't something that we can support. This isn't something that we want to encourage. And we want to continue to do everything we can to discourage this type of activity at Ocean City.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and unmute Connell Smith. Connell, you're unmuted.
So, given the amount of bystanders that were on the sidewalks watching these cars, are you concerned that this could have been a possible super spreader event for the virus?
Yes, we did have concerns about that. And, this generation didn't seem to be too cognizant of the fact of other issues that are going on in this country right now. And that in itself, again, is unfortunate. All of our businesses continue to enforce all of the rules and the regulations set down by the CDC. So anytime they were inside in any of the businesses or any of those venues, they had to comply. And we didn't have any instances or reports that wasn't the case. However, outside, yes, we did have some concerns about that. That's one of the reasons, the chief can speak to it, that as large crowds gathered, we did break them up. Even if they were in parking lots, we tried to break them up. We tried to do whatever we could to disperse them for a number of reasons, but that's certainly one of them. That's something that was always on the list. So, yes, we always have concern about that. Right now, today, everything that occurs, that plays a role in it, and it's something we all need to be cognizant of. We did our very best, outside, inside, I think we probably get an A, but, we're going to have to continue to encourage people at all times to monitor themselves, and that's what was lacking a little bit in this situation.
We have a question from Kylie Panetta with WMDT. What else can be done to deter people from visiting this way in the future? It seems like you pulled out all of the stops this weekend, but it didn't necessarily prevent these events.
Well, I think, and I'll let the chief speak, but I think that maybe they weren't aware that we were going to follow through with everything that we did, and we did follow through. And I think we set the tone and the example starting on Tuesday when the special event zone was implemented. And I think that word spread quickly. And if you looked at the coastal highway, and the chief alluded to it before, a lot of those egregious type of events that had taken place in the past, did not occur. And I think that's because they weren't aware exactly, some of those individuals, of exactly what we intended to do. And we followed through with everything. I simply think we sent a clear message. And I think that will definitely have an effect on the decisions of many of those individuals that certainly didn't comply or don't want to comply from returning in the future.
Okay, and then just the final question. Sorry, 1 second. From Mary Lou, is there an update on the conditions of the 2 officers that were injured, one Friday evening at 31st Street and the other Saturday night at 71st Street?
I think both officers that sustained injuries, their condition is good. They both were treated and released. Once again, I cannot underscore the level of just passion, commitment to duty by all law enforcement personnel. A number of law enforcement that weren't directly employed by the town of Ocean City. Their only stake in this is the brotherhood and sisterhood in law enforcement, and to protect and serve not only their community, but coming into Ocean City and to assist us. Once again, for them to come in and do that for us, we cannot thank them enough. I'm be eternally grateful for their support. And those officers that sustained injuries, engaged with us, supporting us, I personally thank them directly for their efforts. And we will move on. We will look at everything. We'll look at the totality of these circumstances. We have clear marching orders from our community, and that is to safeguard and protect the town of Ocean City. And we will continue to do that at our very best.
If I could add something to that, because he mentioned our community, the Ocean City Police Department, all law enforcement had the total support from the Ocean City community. Our residents were informed, they realized, they knew the problems that they could anticipate. They understood the actions that were going to be necessary, unfortunate, but necessary to be taken by OCPD. And overwhelmingly, they have supported us and our law enforcement officers, as have the local businesses. So this is a community effort. This is not what Ocean City is all about. This is not what we want here. This is not about the dollars. This is about keeping our community safe and keeping it available for other visitors that want to come here, for all the right reasons. If anybody was here during the weekend and we're not aware this took place, I apologize. We did our very best to get that word out in advance. But this isn't what Ocean City is about, and this is not what we want to see moving forward.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mayor. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. For those of you who do have follow-up questions, the town and the Ocean City Police Department will be in touch to answer your questions. Thank you for attending, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.